What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Have you ever wanted to play in one of D&D's iconic settings but didn't want to use the D&D system? I did, and that's the reason I played on the Sword Coast of Faerun using Savage Worlds, but with the Pathfinder variant. Today, I'm going to be covering the entire Pathfinder for Savage Worlds line, and I'm going to be sharing the new Advanced Player's Guide 2, Bestiary 2, and the Bestiary Cards that Pinnacle sent me as a gift. So we're going to go through all the books, the differences between this and regular Savage Worlds, and we're going to talk about how you can use them at your table, what they each offer to your game, and so much more. Without any further ado, let's get into it. If you are enjoying the content, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Engagement is becoming even more important in the YouTube world. So without that engagement, my videos don't get shared, the ads don't get played, and it makes it harder for me to continue to do this. So I appreciate all the engagement that you guys provide, and I hope this video will be worth your engagement today. If you found yourself looking for a group of gamers to discuss games and even play games with, well, you might want to consider coming on down to the Books, Bricks, and Boards Discord server. There's a link in the description, and inside you're going to find a great group of gamers, tons of free resources, and play-by-post games. Check it out when you get a chance. It's all free. Lastly, if you want to support the channel financially, consider a membership. They start as low as $2 a month, and they really help keep me doing this and hopefully giving you content that you enjoy. And with that out of the way, on with the show. History of Savage Pathfinder. Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, or Savage Pathfinder as it is commonly known, released in 2021 during the COVID RPG boom. A conversion of Paizo's first edition Pathfinder, Savage Pathfinder provides a fairly thorough recreation of those rules in the Savage World system. The original Pathfinder rules themselves a variation of the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It is key to note that Savage Pathfinder is based on the original Pathfinder and not 2nd edition, as some of the options and assumptions of the world have changed between versions. So Savage Pathfinder was created to emulate a game that itself was meant to cater to D&D players that didn't want to make the move to 4th edition. The result is that Savage Pathfinder is uniquely situated to replicate the worlds of D&D with the mechanics of Savage Worlds. Don't misunderstand, Golarion is great, a Forgotten Realms style world with a corner for every culture and a deep and rich history. That said, if your nostalgic itch has you wanting to play Greyhawk, Dragonlance, Darksun, Forgotten Realms, or Ravenloft with minimal effort, you can do so with Savage Pathfinder, as all of these were designed to work with its distant ancestor being D&D. Now I can hear you say, but Justin, not everyone still has these old box sets and they're very expensive. Nothing said there is wrong, but it misses a critical point. You don't need the stats, just the fluff, and maybe some maps. You'll use the stats from Savage Pathfinder, adjusting as necessary, so grabbing maps and stories from a $5 paperback novel or printing from the web really gives you all you need to run a game in your favorite setting. See my Savage Sun conversion for an example. All of the necessary dragons, ogres, goblins, and the like are already statted in the Savage Pathfinder bestiaries. In the rare case of an IP-excluded beastie like Rob Kuntz's Beholder, well, let's just say finding a suitable substitute is pretty easy. Since 2021, Pinnacle has supplemented Savage Pathfinder extensively with cards, screens, adventure paths, and, aside from the core rulebook, 2 bestiaries, 2 advanced player's guides, a companion, and that's not even mentioning the Fantasy Companion, which offers a ton of suitable additions to your Savage Pathfinder games. With the recent release of the full Bestiary 1 and 2 in card format, along with the Bestiary 2 and Advanced Player's Guide, it appears that Pinnacle is prepared to support the line as long as we are prepared to play it. As far as the product line goes, there's no better place to start than the core rulebook itself. Inside these pages, you're going to find 7 ancestries, being dwarf, halfling, elf, gnome, half-orc, and half-elf. There are 11 class edges, including bard, barbarian, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, sorcerer, and wizard. There's 10 prestige class edges, being Arcane Archer, Arcane Trickster, Assassin, Dragon Disciple, Duelist, Eldritch Knight, Lore Master, Mystic Thurge, Pathfinder Chronicler, and Shadow Dancer. All told, there are 195 edges, 64 powers, and 19 monsters in the bestiary of the core rulebook itself. As for the bestiary, it mainly covers common monsters when it comes to the one included in the core rulebook. As you look through this book, you'll get a great feel for what the world of Golarion is. It doesn't go into a ton of depth, but it does tell you what you need to know to play a game set there. You also get all of the core rules that you're going to need to play Savage Worlds. And they're all tweaked specifically to play the kind of fantasy game that's appropriate to Golarion, or Forgotten Realms, or Dragonlance, etc., etc. And because Savage Worlds is such a toolkit of a system, it's very easy to add or remove pieces to flavor to your own liking. If you are a longtime Pathfinder fan, you'll probably see some familiar art, as there is a lot of art that has been reused from the first edition of the game. That's okay, because it is really good for the most part. As you flip through this book, you'll see that if you're a Savage Worlds fan, what Paizo and Pinnacle have combined to do is take that Paizo experience and, using the existing Savage Worlds system, make it a pre-made group of setting rules to cover the type of game that you're wanting to play. So you can see here in the spells section, or the powers rather, as they're called in Savage Worlds, basically all of the spells that you would be casting in a D&D or D&D clone type of game have used existing or new powers and then tweak them to make them more like the spells that you expected. There are a generous list of magical items and artifacts, and you get a little bit of a bestiary at the end, but not enough to really wet your whistle if you're relying on just this book. But technically, this book does have everything that you need to play a game. The second release in the Savage Pathfinder line was the Bestiary. And the Bestiary, though a little thin, packs a lot more than it appears at a glance. It has roughly 240 entries for different beasties to throw at your players. You're going to get all of your favorites in here, excepting for a few cases where they are IP-related monsters, like the aforementioned Beholder. As you flip through the Bestiary, you are going to find that the stat blocks have that common Savage Worlds feel to them, and you get a nice mix of art for not all, but many of the monsters, especially the ones that might need a little bit more description to tell the players what they look like. That said, when we get to the Bestiary Cards later, that will completely solve your art needs. So as you can see, there's a lot of the favorites. There's Driders, and Drow, and Dryads, and Ettercaps, and Elephants, and Stone Giants, and Hill Giants, and Fire Giants, and all sorts of different giant animals. And there's Eagles if you want to play your Lord of the Rings game. And there's Goblins and Goblin Dogs. Now, some people may not like the Pathfinder version of the Goblin. That's okay. The stat block remains largely the same. You can make them look whatever you want, like whatever you want to in your own game. But as I flip through, you'll see you've got a ton. There's your owlbear. Ton of options here that are going to fill, there's your Tarask, the needs of your game, whatever setting you choose to go with. The next book release, as I recall, was the Pathfinder for Savage Worlds Companion. Now, this book is largely designed to give you the background information on the inner sea region of the world of Golarion. So you might wonder, if I'm not going to play in Golarion, does this have any value to me? Well, I will tell you, for me, that was a resounding yes. When I played in the Sword Coast of Faerun using the Savage Pathfinder system, this book, or pages from this book, were actually the ones that I referenced the most. And that's because they have some great adventure generators specific to the environs that your characters are going to be in. So that makes this a very valuable book for anybody. Because again, Golarion is that generic fantasy kind of setting, and the encounter tables here, you could easily drop into Faerun, Krynn, Ravenloft. Sure, you'll want to adjust some things for the setting. Krynn, of course, doesn't have orcs, so on and so forth. But largely, you can use what's here and just tweak it for your specific setting if you're going to use one of those older existing nostalgia settings. The companion also has 3 prestige edges, being the Fang Monastery Monk, the Hell Knight, and the Red Mantis Assassin. So as we flip through this book, you're going to see a lot of history of the world of Golarion, some discussion of the different areas, but mainly this is going to focus on the Inner Sea region, which is where 95% of Pathfinder games have taken place. Here's some of those different encounter tables, and the way that it works is similar to the way it worked in the Lankmar series books for Savage Worlds. If you've looked at those before, you'll draw a card and then roll a die, and then there are brief descriptions of what those encounter types mean, and you kind of flesh them out on your own. It's a great tool, especially if you want to use the game for solo play. And here we're flipping through. There's the Red Mantis Assassin. And it has a nice section on the deities of Golarion at the end of the book. The next book release was the Advanced Player's Guide, which added 5 new ancestries, being Azamar, Catfolk, Damphir, Goblins, and Tieflings. It also added 5 new classes, being the Alchemist, Cavalier, Inquisitor, Oracle, and Summoner. There are 8 new prestige classes, with the Battle Herald, Holy Vindicator, Horizon Walker, Master Chemist, Master Spy, Nature Warden, Rage Prophet, and Stalwart Defender. It adds 112 new edges and several new or updated powers. As we flip through the Player's Guide, Advanced Player's Guide, you are going to find a similar format to the core rulebook. In addition to the new ancestries, there are also alternate ancestral abilities for all of the ancestries from the core rulebook as well. So this is where you could create a better depiction of the various subraces of dwarves, elves, halflings, and the like. Got new edges and hindrances, some notes about the skills. One of the things that I really like about the Savage Pathfinder presentation is that they took the idea of iconic characters for each class, which were already present in Paizo's Pathfinder, but they give a full advancement track for that iconic character within the Savage Pathfinder system. So it really shows you how they would create this iconic character, an archetype for the class within the confines of the Savage World system. I think that's great because Number one, it gives you a pre-made character that you can drop right into your game no matter how far you are into your campaign, but also it gives you a great guideline for what may or may not be important to this type of character. Again, the art is great, though a lot of it is reused, as I said before. Summoners add lots of rules for customized pets. And I love that they do these summaries for the edges and the powers in each of the books so you can quickly reference what was in this book. This book added classes that needed some specialized gear, and so you got some of that right there, which is pretty cool. Did add the idea of cantrips. Got some more magical items and artifacts. You might wonder, well, what's this doing in the player book? Good question. But, times have changed. Now we put magical items and artifacts right in the player book. So then they can hound you ceaselessly and say, why don't I have the Dragonlance? Well, because you're the player and I'm the GM. And here we have the first of the new books that were given to me very generously by Pinnacle Games, Pinnacle Entertainment. And this is the Bestiary 2. And it's got the Jabberwock right on the cover. A really great image there of an iconic beastie. And you can tell it's a little bit stiff bindings here because I've been mainly reading out of my PDF, which I did pay for. I bought the PDFs even though they gave me these two books. That's how much I like this game. In the Bestiary 2, you're going to find 163 different entries for monsters. You're going to find new lycanthropes, jabberwocks, primal dragons, blink dogs, cyclopses, pseudo dragons, and all the like. There's also some different improved familiar options, which are going to give your casters a little bit more variety in their choice of familiars. There's a large section on different outer planes type creatures, angels and demons and all the like. Several of those in here. A lot of weird looking things that you can throw at your players. I did pass the boggard there and the brownie. But some of the ones that were iconic and missing from the first bestiary have made their way here. Chimeras and cloakers and cyclopses, these are all very common old school monsters that have finally been statted up for Savage Worlds. Big section of demons here. Let's get our bookmarks out of the way. Like I said, lots and lots of outer planar type characters. There's the Arrhenius. More dinosaurs. These are some of those primal dragons. I wasn't super excited about having primal dragons until I actually looked at them and I was like, oh yeah, I could insert these into my game. Got the Dullahan, which is the Headless Horseman. Got a significant portion of content related to genies, jinns, and afrits. I think that is probably because they included elemental ancestral options in the Advanced Player's Guide 2 for all the 4 core elements. and they are kind of related to djinns and ifrits, and so it made sense to include the monster stat blocks. More gremlins, hippogriffs. That's another popular old school monster. There's the Jabberwock. The new Werebear and Wereboar stats. Pegasus. And get to the end here. Whales. And there's your bestiary too. There's a lot in there. You know, a lot of folks say that you can't go wrong with a good monster book, and I think they're right. And the latest book release, the Advanced Player's Guide 2, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is the book that I've been the most excited for coming out in recent years. This is going to add 5 new ancestries, being the Ifrit, the Oread, the Sylph, the Undine, and the Vinelashie. 4 new classes, being the Gunslinger, the Magus, the Ninja, and the Shifter. Also, one of the classes from the Advanced Player's Guide 1 gets a variant, being the Cavalier now has some options to make that class a Samurai, which there is some precedent for, as the Cavalier in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was used kind of as an archetype to build the Samurai class in Oriental Adventures, so I can get behind that. There are 52 new edges in the book. There's also rules for spell duels and traps, and all sorts of rules for firearms, as the Gunslinger is one of the new classes. So there's a lot to like here. So let's jump in. So the ancestries, as I mentioned before, are elemental in nature. You've got your Ifrits, your Oreads, your Sylphs, your Undines, and your Vinelashies. All the new edges and hindrances, class edges, and again, you get your iconics just like you did in the core rulebook and in the original Advanced Player's Guide, and especially for something that plays very differently from the class edges that you're used to using, having this advancement track and kind of seeing how they would build this character out really does help. The Magus, one of my favorites. I will say, the Ninja, as presented here, is much better than what I expected. Ninjas from pop culture have had such a wide variety of depictions that it's hard to hit the mark for everybody, and I understand that. But the one as presented here really gives me that wuxia ninja feel, and that's what I'm looking for. Now, your mileage may vary there, but all the powers that they get and stuff, these are what I think of when I think of ninja, especially in a game. Shifters are kind of a variation on druids that are focused on shapeshifting. Get all their different forms. There is a combat edge for the crane style, and if you look closely, you may recognize this pose that the monk is doing here. There is the rules for the Samurai Order for the Cavalier class edge. And just when you think that all of the art is pretty tame, you get an Inquisitor bursting through this undead creature with gore everywhere. Lots of alchemical options and firearms, stats for new familiar types. A very generous section on traps. This was one of the common complaints about Savage Pathfinder when it first came out. It didn't give much in the way of examples of how to do traps in the game. And Pinnacle listened, and they give you a ton of different options to create traps in the game. Again, kind of wondering why this is in the player's book, but that's okay as long as we've got it. Got some new powers in here. A lot of these are going to be familiar, like permanency. We've got symbols and new magic items. I think I saw Baylor back there. The dwarves dug too deeply. Rules for spell duels, discoveries, spell blights. And some new hazards. Wilderness traps. These are kind of the natural things that you might find. If you ever wanted to run Star Wars and have your Ewoks smashing ATSTs, well, there's your swinging log right there. There is a new template that was included in here, which you can take a photocopy of, or if you've got the PDF, just print and cut out this. Not sure how I feel about that. I like that they have the templates in the core game, and I love that in the Ultimate Core box, which had the core rulebook, the bestiary, some cards, some dice, some tokens, some Benny tokens. It also had cardboard versions of the different templates, and now I'm not going to have one for this. Not sure that having a small cone template was necessarily important to the game, but it doesn't really hurt anything to have it, I suppose. And that is the line of book releases for Savage Pathfinder. I went through all the core books, but I've got something else to share that was recently released. Again, these cards were provided for free by Pinnacle Entertainment Group for me to talk about on the channel. I'm not getting paid by Pinnacle to do this review. I do it because I enjoy their product, but it was nice to get some free merch to talk to you guys about. To start with, this is their magnetic deck box, which is designed to fit their specially sized cards, such as the Archetype and Adventure Path NPC cards. So those are nice, and they would fit the types of cards I'm going to be talking about in a moment, but you'd have to buy several of them because there are a lot of cards that I'm going to be talking about right now. So these are cards from the two different bestiaries. And there are 5 different sets of these, and they cost different amounts based on the sets. I think the least expensive sets are $15. The most expensive are $25, and that's because they have a different number of cards in each of them. But they're each themed, so if you kind of know where your campaign is heading, for example, if you're wanting to play an undead heavy campaign like Ravenloft, this would be one of your essential deck boxes to get. And so this is Bestiary Card Set 1, and what you get, similar to the way Paizo did their Pathfinder 2nd Edition Bestiary cards, but a smaller format, which I like. So you get a picture of the beastie on the front and the stat block on the back. So the way that I use these in Pathfinder 2nd edition, I could put them right in front of my players like that. They can see what they're fighting, so they have an image in their mind of what the thing looks like. And then I'm looking at the backside of it, and I can see what all of its stats are. So when they ask to take a swing at it, I know what its parry value is. And I know if it has any special abilities that I need to reference in reaction to something that they're doing. Keeps everything right at your fingertips. And some of the different monsters in the original Bestiary books didn't have individual artwork for them. Well, they do now, because every single creature from Bestiary 1 and 2 are represented in these 5 decks. So you technically, if you bought all of the decks, you really wouldn't need either of the bestiaries. And since they're divided into categories and then alphabetically, you have a nice reference method to find exactly what you're looking for. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I wanted to give you an idea of the quality that we're talking about here. And so we've got a lot of different beasties. And there are actually 2 different sets that I've put into this one box. And you got the Trask, Purple Worm. And what I did to store mine was I got a simple pen and gear index card box. Cost me, I think, 99 cents, maybe $2. And you got to be careful because you really have to jam a lot of these in unless you want to buy 20 of these index card boxes. But that's how I store mine. Those were sets 1 and 2. Here's set 3 and 4. And this one's another $14.99 set. Humanoids, Constructs, and Fae. There was Werebears and Wereboars. Ogrekin. Boggards. Trolls. Ogres. Werewolves. Wererats. And it just occurred to me, it looks like the ones up front are Bestiary 1 monsters, and the ones in the back tend to be Bestiary 2. But you got your stats on the back, picture on the front. So whenever my players are going to fight the hobgoblins, I just pop that guy on there and say, you see a group of 10 of these, and they look angry, and they're coming straight forward. So that is a good way to establish kind of a feel of what their characters would be seeing. And then this might be my favorite of the different sets, because this is the dragons and monstrous humanoids. And so you got all the different versions of each dragon. And you've got all the different dragons, of course. Drag turtles, the linorms, tatzelworms, wyverns, crystal dragons. These are the primal dragons from the Bestiary 2. The Jabberwock, centaurs, minotaurs, morlocks, yetis, mothman. And again, when I'm done with them, I simply place them back in this very inexpensive index card box, and they store away very neatly. And this is the last of the sets. This is set 5. It's one of the more expensive ones because it has all of the outsiders. And as I mentioned, Bestiary 2 had a number of them. Well, Bestiary 1 had quite a few as well. So you got lots of demons, Balors, Succubus, Hit Fiends, Elementals. Just kind of showing you the names more so than the art here, but that gives you an idea of what's in each pack. So you can kind of slow down the video and take a look and make sure that this is going to be the deck for you. I realize I have the benefit of these were provided to me by Pinnacle, so I didn't have to shell out the cash for them. But now that I have them in my hands, I can see how valuable they would have been to my game of Savage Worlds on the Sword Coast, just as the ones that I did buy for Pathfinder 2e were valuable to my campaign that I had in that game. And those are the Bestiary cards. The Savage Pathfinder difference. For hardened Savage Worlds vets, you will find some changes to the standard game, but as Savage Worlds is already a toolkit, it should not ruffle too many feathers. From the core rules, page 13, we see research skill got combined into academics. There are several edge changes, mainly to accommodate some niche protection for the class edges. Class edges are added, essentially all the crucial aspects of a class rolled into a tree of edge choices. Changes to the arcane backgrounds, again, mostly to accommodate the class edge system. There are gear changes, a new desperate attack option, new enemies, and some new and updated powers. None of that covers what I consider the most valuable change, which is the pre-built set of setting rules, which are just assumed in Savage Pathfinder. While a lot of us really enjoy the do-it-yourself aspect of the Savage World system, many more just want something pre-made and ready to play. Savage Pathfinder gives us that option with a proven concept and a beloved world. In a lot of ways, Savage Pathfinder is an example of how to tweak the system to achieve a very specific type of game. Now, the good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1, flexibility. Savage Pathfinder was designed to emulate a D&D clone. Because of that, you can use it in a lot of different varieties, as there's a ton of different ways to play D&D itself. I would argue that the Savage World system, being much more flexible than the core system for traditional D&D, gives even more flexibility for this style of gameplay. When you add on top of that the different options and add-ons that you can provide from the Savage Worlds core system, well, you get an incredible amount of variety that you can add to your table. Number 2, completeness. This is a fully realized set of fantasy rules. It's not a toolkit that you have to build your own rule set with. This is unlike Savage Worlds as a core system, which kind of expects you to do a little building and developing to have a fully realized game set. With Savage Pathfinder, you have everything that you need to play a fantasy RPG campaign. This is going to appeal to a lot of players that otherwise might have been turned off by the incompleteness of Savage Worlds as a setting, not a system. Number 3, great production values. The art, the layout, the editing, the quality, the binding, the pages, everything about the Savage Pathfinder line has been done to the best quality. It is exactly what you would expect if you have been a fan of Pinnacle games over the years. They don't do anything halfway. Everything has the absolute best. Savage Pathfinder also benefits from the trove of art that was available from the first edition of Pathfinder by Paizo. That art is admittedly not for everyone, but for me, I love their dungeon punk way of presenting the different fantasy worlds that you will play in. Now, the bad. Number one, no D20. Now, this isn't a problem for me, and technically it's not even true. You do use D20s for some of the tables as a game master, but what I'm saying is a lot of players are expecting, even yearning, to be rolling that big 20-sided die because that is what playing an RPG is to them. Pathfinder focuses on the lesser loved dice, the D12 on down to the D4. And I'm okay with that, but some of your players might not be. Matter of fact, whenever I had the discussion about switching to Savage Worlds, when we did our Savage Worlds on the Sword Coast campaign, one of the players specifically noted that he had just bought new dice and he spent all this money and he's not going to be able to use one of the 7 dice in his set. He quickly got over that when he found how enjoyable it was to play a game that was not focused on attrition-based combat, but rather swingy cinematic flair combat. So this is going to be something that you may have to address as a DM trying to get your group to give this a try. Number 2, the art. Again, this is a matter of preference. There are going to be people that immediately feel this is not for them because they see the way that a goblin or a dragon is presented in Savage Pathfinder. That's okay. You can just insert old versions of the art because the stat blocks are the same. But if the art of the book is going to be a big issue for you and you just can't stand the Paizo art, well, that's what you're getting here, so you've been warned. Number 3, sprawling line. What book is that in again? Between the powers, the edges, the monsters, the items, etc. There are a lot of different places that you may have to look to find the specific piece of information that you're wanting to use. Now, typically you can follow their logic and you'll be able to find what you're looking for, but who would have guessed that finding the rules for traps was going to be in the Advanced Player's Guide too? Most GMs, I think, would look in the core book for that. That's just one example. A while back, Shadowrun 5th edition did a special version of their core rule book that had a master index in the back of it that gave the page and book that every different item in their index referenced. And that would be great for a system like Savage Pathfinder because as the line grows, we are getting to the point where it may not be as easy to find a specific item that you're wanting to use at your table. Summary. It is no secret I love Savage Worlds, and before that I loved Pathfinder, so combining the two was sure to get a good reaction from me. No surprise, it did. But what was surprising is just how well it all fit together. The class edges, which could have added unnecessary complication to an elegant system, were implemented in such a way that they worked seamlessly with the existing mechanics. The addition of D&D tropes and enemies were so well thought out that during my Savage Worlds on the Sword Coast campaign, my players were fully bought in before the end of the first session. Quite a feat, as they were understandably skeptical going in, but they soon realized the beauty of the system. It isn't balanced in the way that D&D is, where through attrition you pretty well know most encounters' outcomes long before the last die is rolled. In Savage Pathfinder, results are less predictable by design, keeping players and GMs engaged and active in gameplay fast, furious, and fun. Look at those absolute legends. Keith, Simone, Dengar the Mighty, Joke, Blue Rose Lion, Agile Monk, Bjorn, and Mike the Hammer. Special thanks to I Am Not Tim, Acine Dean, and Steve Grodzicki, coming soon. Over the next couple of weeks, I'll be covering Painted Wasteland for Old School Essentials, the One Ring Buyer's Guide, a new adventure for Tales of Argosa, and much, much more. If you would like me to cover a specific topic, tell me about it in the comments. I won't be able to get to everybody's choices, but if enough of you have the same thing in mind, well, we'll just see what we can do. Until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.